Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another project. In this project, we're going to create a completely responsive, tasty recipe website. We're going to create this website using only Tailwind CSS for styling and, of course, regular JavaScript. So no fancy JavaScript frameworks are needed to create a simple website like this. We're going to integrate smooth scrolling. Also, we're going to have, let's go here to recipes. We can select our recipes. We can also, this is zoomed out a bit too much. So we can select specific recipes, go over them, and then also close them. We can also search for recipes. Let's search for a pizza recipe. There we go. Pizza margarita. What do we need? We need strong red flour, 1 tablespoon of dry yeast. And yeah, I love pizza. So let's just go over the website. We're going to have here a navigation, which is going to be sticky to the top when we're scrolling down. So this is also going to help us navigate through the website. We're going to have home section, a recipes section, where we're going to have all of our recipes, of course. We're going to have 6 recipes. You can integrate more if you want. I'm going to show you a website where I'm getting these images. Then we're going to have a simple about section. We can type something about yourself. And then a contact section where you can basically type in phone numbers, on social media, links, and a simple message form. Down here, we're going to have a footer with your copyright and date. And the date will be reacted to the current date. So basically, you're watching this in 2025. It's going to be 2035. If you're watching this in 2027, it's going to be 2007. Down here, we're going to create this using JavaScript. So this is also completely responsive. This right to the side. Recipes are going to also work in a mobile format. Drag it down here. So there we go, tablet format. And we're good to go. So hit the like, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started by creating another folder here. Now, by the way, this is part of a longer series. If you're not following the series, then just create a folder where you want to create this folder, preferably creative projects folder, and then create this dynamic recipe website. Now, the other projects that you see here are part of a series. You can check it out on my YouTube channel. I'm going to leave a link in the video description. Also, for YouTube members, you're going to get this, as always, much sooner as the regular viewers. And the code for this video is, as always, in the video description, but it's on my Substack, so I'm not going to publish on my blog any more code or blog posts. I'm going to move everything to Substack. That's where blog posts so will be published. This is also in the GitHub repository, so feel free to check that one out. Okay, so let's get started with the project. Just going to create a simple index.html file here. Hold on, shift exclamation mark, and boom, we're getting to go. I'm going to close this for the time being. Also, let's just see here. I have some notes. So we're going to use Font Awesome for these icons. We're going to use Google Fonts with some specific font heights. And we're going to use Tailwind CSS. So all of them just going to copy in the links up here. Basically grab them from the repository. So first of all, I'm going to copy in the link for Google Fonts. We're going to use the font of Inter with the font families of 400 or font weight 400, 500, 600, and 700. Then I'm going to integrate the CDN from Font Awesome. You can find all of the links down in the video description, so don't worry about these links. So this is the link for Font Awesome, for Cloudinary, and now we're going to also copy in the link for Tailwind CSS at latest. So basically, we're going to use the latest version. It is 4.1. Want to learn more about Tailwind CSS? I just released a course. Feel free to check that one out. Now, I'm also going to integrate here a specific style, but so using Tailwind CSS. But before we do that, let's name our little website. So Tasty Recipes will be the name of the website. And we can't say anything yet, but I'm just going to open it using live server. So here's our website with nothing in it. Okay, now I'm going to start with a couple of to-dos. So obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can go through these sections. If you miss something, they're down in the timestamps. So first things first, let's start out by adding some classes to the entire body. So we're going to start with the BG, gray, and 100 here, and a font Inter. Okay, so nothing to see here yet. So we're going to continue on with our first. I'm going to name them to-dos, so the sections. So to-do, create a sticky navigation bar. We're going to integrate the sticky navigation bar into a header, first of all. So header, start with the header tag. You can see here in our finished project, let's go to home. This is where our navigation will live. So within the header, I'm going to create a div with a class of container. Then first we're going to have this little tasty recipe logo. Now, full disclosure, I'm going to move much faster than in a regular course, because I do assume that you already know a little bit of Tailwind CSS. I'm also not going to go in each and every detail for this. This is not a course. So let's add our recipes there. And I'm going to use an anchor tag. This is going to go nowhere. Just refresh the page or just go to home. Add a couple of classes and also the title of tasty recipes. Okay, you should already see it right here. Okay, now let's increase the text by adding a text XL, and the font will be semi-bold. Okay, there we go. Now after this, we're going to have the navigation itself. So nav, I'm going to add here a flex and space on the x-axis of 6. Let's hit enter, and let's just add a couple of li. So li, and it's going to include a anchor tag with the classes of on hover text and amber 200, a dot transition, and a duration. So let's add a bit of effect here, a transition duration of 300. Okay, and for the text, we're just going to type in home. Now, this is going to be pretty repetitive, and also I'm going to add here for the link. So as you saw in the finished project, if I click on home, let's just go to contact. But if I click on home, it's going to navigate back to it. So the way you achieve this, just going to add here ID of, or the hash of home, which is then also going to be used as a ID later on. So let me copy this and paste it in 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Change home, second one, these two to recipes, and you should be a capital R. There we go. Home recipe, home, home, home. Now the next one will be about, like both of them about, and then the context section. Okay, now remember to add them as capitalized here and here, and there we go. We have our navigation up and running here, and it should be also capital home. Now let's move back to the header, because I'm not done. So everything that is in the header, let's add class here. We have a BG of amber and 500. There we go. Now the text should be white, but remember we added to this a hover effect. So when I hover over this text from the navigation itself, it's going to be amber, but a 100 amber. Okay, now let's add some padding on the y-axis of 4, a shadow, MD, and let's fix this now to the top. Let's add a fix, top 0, that's where it should be fixed, and left and 0. Okay, and this should also take up the full width of the website and also bring it to the front with Z10. Okay, so this is going to give us this effect that when I scroll it, the web page that is, then the content will go under it. Okay, it's going to be forward and everything else will be in the background. Now let's move back to this div container. Let's add here margin on the axis is auto. Going to center everything, will add an automatic margin to the left and right. Also add to this a padding on the x-axis this time of 4. Going to display everything as flex. So when you display something as flex, going to flex in the row direction. You can see that these are not aligned, so we can items center, items to the center, items. Okay, and let's just justify the items with between, space between. Okay, so left and right, everything set up as it should be. Okay, we're done with our navigation, so I'm going to just make it smaller here. We are also done with the container here and the header. So let's close this up and let's add another to do. But first, after the header, we're going to create a main tag. It's just going to have a class of key padding to the top of 20. Now let me just think about it. No, I don't need a padding to the top. We're just going to create a main tag. I need a container for everything that I'm going to create from here on. And we're going to do now a hero section with some background image. Now let's create a section. So each and everything that I'm going to create from this point on will be in section tags. Now you remember that I added to a little header here in the this home ID. Well, this not an ID but hash home. Now this needs to coincide with some kind of ID. So the header section will, not the header section, but the main section, the hero section will have the ID of home, and each and every section will be styled pretty much the same. So I'm just going to create a style here for this section, and then I'm just going to copy paste them all over again. Now let's first of all add this height of this section as screen height. Then let's add a background of amber, but 100, a padding on the y-axis of 20, a padding on the x-axis of 4, and the background as cover, BG center, background center, because we are going to add an image to this section. Now I'm going to copy this once, and this is going to be a recipe section. So recipes, and after this, we're going to have our about section. So let's copy it, about. These are going to have different fonts and backgrounds, you see. So hero section, then the recipe sections will be white. I'm going to change this just in a couple of seconds. The next one about this will be also white. Contact section will be amber again, and dark, obviously. Next, we're going to have a context section. So ID of contact. Remember to have exactly the same ID. So if you have this as capital case, then go ahead. But if not, then have exactly the same IDs. And then, well, the very last section will be a footer. So outside the main, we're going to have here a footer section. I'm also going to paste in here a to do a footer, add a footer. So you know what? We're going to style the footer right now. So footer, create a footer tag. Let's add a couple of classes to it. First of all, a BG of gray and 800, then a text white, a padding on the y-axis of 6. As you see it here, you have a padding on the y-axis of 6. Let's hit save. So we can't see anything because we need to add some kind of content. And we're going to add here a div. So just type in a dot and add a class of container. The margin on the x-axis of auto, padding on the x-axis of 4, and a dot text and center. Okay, so everything that you type in here, like for example, paragraph tag with the ampersand and copy, we're going to get this. You have it down the, there we go. Copyright, then 2025. But I'm going to have this in span text, so span and ID of current year, 2025, and then just a text outside of span tag of tasty recipes, all rights reserved. So just a second. Okay, that's much better. Now let's create a JavaScript file. So let's go in our folder, new file, called it script.js. Let's link it up down here. After the footer, we're going to have here script. Link up the script tag, script.js. Go in here and let's say to do create dynamic here. So let's grab onto this ID right here. Now we have current year, const here, so document is equal to document, create selector, and right here the ID of current year. Now const, let's create a date objects. So I need to grab onto the current year, and for this we're going to create another variable, call it year and new. I have problems with naming stuff, so date object, and we're just going to get from this the get full year, all that we need. Now current year dot, not dot, but it's equal to the year. That's actually all we need to do. So you can see we have here 2025, but if I would change this to 24, and this should be text content. Sorry, text content. As you're going to see, it's going to change back to 25. Okay, so simple as that. Getting off current year. You could even make it simpler by just adding. Cut this out, delete this, add just this, and there we go. Same thing, less code. So I'm going to leave it this way. Now that's it for this section. Let's move on now to our hero section up here. And for hero section, let's start by going back to our HTML and start styling it. Oh, sorry about that. Hero section. We have our ID, home. We have our classes, set everything up perfectly. Now I'm going to go back into this section tag and add here style, not a class, but in here after the classes. So style tag, style property, not tag. Sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and grab to the background image, and I'm just going to paste in here a image from Unsplashed, copy and paste in the same thing from the finished code. Is going to get the, what are these? I know, but they look really delicious. So let's paste in. This is going to be the background image for our hero section. So for the entire section, this is going to be one section height. Even, oops, larger. Let me select this. It is going to maintain its size. So within our section, let's create now a div as a container class. Add margin on the x-axis of auto and text. Center a background of black and a BG. We're going to reduce the opacity a bit, so you could do a BG opacity of 30. I want the margins to be rounded, so use the class of rounded, and LG, so I have more rounding, and padding around padding of 12. Now within here, so this is what we just created. Within here, we're going to add, if you take a look in our finished project, go to home, we're going to add a title, description, and explore recipes, which is going to send us down to our recipes, of course. So we need to add a head, a welcome, then a short description, and of course we need to add a call to action button, is what it's called. So each time you hear a call to action, it's referring to this. So do something when you click on this. It is very important on websites. So H1, let's start with the title, welcoming H1. With the text of the class of text 4XL, want a really large text here. Font should be bold. A margin bottom, so I have more space of 6. With differentiation here and a text of white. So let's add in here. Welcome as a text to tasty recipes. Okay, and so we see it here, but the text is not white because I messed up here. White, there we go. So welcome to tasty recipes. Next, let's add the description. So what is this site about? Use a paragraph tag with the class. Let's just do a paragraph tag. I'm going to type in the text or paste in the text. I'm to type in everything. So discover a world of delicious recipes. For some reason, I should actually go up here and use the text white here. So everything is going to have the color of the parent element, of course. Now let's style this. So class of text and just XL. Okay, now we're going to add a color to this of text gray and 200, and let's add a margin bottom of 12. There we go. So I have more space to the bottom because we need that space for the call to action button. Now this is just going to be an anchor tab because this is going to navigate us down. Click on this, going to navigate us down to the recipes. Simple to do it by adding here a H of recipes. So let's also add a text here, explore recipes, capital R. So click on it and it should go down to recipes. Well, it's an empty section, but you can see the navigation is working. Okay, it's jumping around here. We're also going to integrate smooth scrolling just in a couple of minutes. So be patient with the clumsiness of the website for now. Okay, now let's style this button. Let's add a class of BG Ember, and we're going to go with 500. So we're going to maintain those colors 500, 500, 100, and so on and so on. The text is already white, so what I'm going to do here, just add a padding on the y-axis of 3 and a padding on the x-axis of 6. Now this is pretty much standard that you always add half for the y-axis to what you added to the x-axis. Now let's round down the edges. So rounded and use full here. Yeah, that's perfect. Rounded full. Now when we hover over the button, we want first of all to change the colors. So PG Amber 600. Then let's add a transition duration because without this, just jump in and out of the color. Now we can also increase or decrease the duration. I like it with duration of 300, so 0.3 milliseconds. No, 300 milliseconds, 0.3 seconds. Let's change the font to semi-bold and the text should be LG. And there we go. Beautiful button with a little bit of background animation. Also add a cursor and pointer. There we go. So indicating that we can click around here. So we are done with our hero section. I'm going to close up now the section. And now we're going to move on to our next section, which is going to be the recipes. So add here a recipes section, what we're going to do next up. A couple of changes to the section classes. So everything here, I'm going to remove Ember. Padding will be only 16 on the y-axis. BG cover center is going to remove. Like this all over the place. So select this BG cover center, hold down Control or Command on a Mac, and D, just delete it. Okay. Also background Amber, you can delete this all over the place. Actually, you can delete it. Just leaving screen height, and that's pretty much it for now. Now we need to, yeah, there are our screen sizes. We need to go back in here. Take a look at now. Finish project. You can see we have a title and we have a couple of, we have a grid display here, but I'm not going to use grid. I'm going to use Flexbox for this. So what we are going to do is go back into our H1 in our section, and right here after screen, we're going to type in flex, then justify the space between items, align the item center, and the rest we can type in now here in our section tag. So what we want to have here is a container, different container, well, all of these. So I'm going to get another div here, just container, and again, margin on the axis is auto. So let's go in here. Let's add an H2 and also featured image recipes, image talking about here. So featured recipes, it will be down here. So we're going to use now we're going to use the grid system to add the placeholders for the images, because the actual images and the recipes will be in the database in our JavaScript file. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, create a card system, the grid system for the cards. And we're just going to create a regular div with the class of grid. The grid calls M1, so one column. But when we are going to be in a medium screen size, then the grid calls will change to 2 columns. Also in the larger screen size, we're going to have a grid and calls 3, and we're going to have an all-around gap between those elements of 8. And also I need an ID here now, because we're going to take this ID, so ID of recipes and container. Okay, so because we're going to use JavaScript to add these recipes right here. Now, after this, moving outside of this grid, we're going to need this little search section where we can search for different recipes. So let's add here another to-do search section. And for this, basically, we're going to have an input and a search button and a little title up here. So let's create another container for this, a div with the class of flex. Then we're going to justify center, and we're going to add a margin to the bottom of 6. Okay, so let's add here, first things first, the input. Oh, we see this input tag right here. There we go. Well, Tailwind handles input tags like they're nothing. So you need to style it. But actually, wait just a second, I missed something. And that is the main container of this entire thing, because I also want to have the title up here. And also didn't style the feature recipes. So let's go back to our feature recipes. Add to this a style of text. Let's increase the text size to 2XL. That's much better. Let's change to semi-bold, font, semi-bold, margin bottom of 8, a text color of gray, and let's go with 800. And let's also push the text to the center, so text center. There we go. Now after H2 is our grid layout. After that we have our search, but this search should actually be in a container previously mentioned, but I didn't type it out. So container right here. I'm going to move now this up here before the contain. So before this flex, the input, the search bar, we're going to have a title. So H2, let's type in here search and recipes. Let's align this container to the center. So margin on x-axis, auto, push it to the center and add a margin to the bottom of 16. Okay. Now for the text itself, let's add here a couple of classes. We're going to increase the text to 2XL. Exactly as we have the text above here. You know what? You could basically copy the entire style of the classes. I wanted to have it as the same style. So feature recipes, search recipes, they're kind of part of the same section. So I want the same style for them. Now for the input, I'm going to leave this as text, but I'm going to add an ID to this as search and dash input. And now let's style it so for us to see the input. We need to add a bit of style here. Let's add a placeholder, and let's just type in here search for recipes. Boom, there we go. Okay, now let's add a couple of classes for us to see our input text. So first of all, I'm going to use a width of full. Then in a medium size, I'm going to have only a width of half of its full width. Then let's go here with padding on the x-axis of 4, padding on the y-axis of 2. Around this, the margins full. Let's add a bit of border to it. Border, to see something, and border gray and 300. There we go. Border gray. There's our border. Now, when I focus in here, I don't like this dark border. So focus, you can change it by using focus. Ring and focus, ring and amber of 200. Okay, so now oh yeah, I need to remove the outlines first of all. So focus, outline none. Okay, now you should see that amber color. Perfect. Now let's add the search button. So this will be the next to do. I forgot the previous one, which was add the search input. So the next one is to add a search button. We're going to use here a regular button. This is going to have the ID of search, and you guessed it, button. Now for style, I'm going to use here a couple of classes of BG. So cursor pointer, never forget to use the cursor pointer. Then let's change the background color using BG amber. We're going to go here with a 500 color. Text white, let it text it, see what we're styling here. Search, okay, there's a search button. Ugly search button. we're going to take care of it. Padding on the y-axis of 3, padding on the x-axis of 6. Let's go ahead and round down the borders, rounded, full, much better. Let's add a margin to the left side of 4, so it's going to differentiate it from it. Now a couple of hover effects. Sorry, I have such a sore throat. You know what? Water break. Drink water. You should always keep yourself really hydrated when you're working. So search button. We have a click pointer. Let's add hover effects. So hover. What do I want to do here? EG. Change the background to amber, but 300. No, wait, 600. Why am I going lower? This is not how you should style things. So BG 600. And of course, transition. And now if you don't add anything, that's just going to have a regular transition. You can also leave it this way. I like it this transition. Or if you want to add that same transition, which should be much better, because you're going to have the same feeling for the website. So duration of 300, you're going to have the same feeling for the entire website. Okay, now just want to change the font to semi-bold, and we are bold, just bold, semi-bold, and we are good to go. Now, I want to make just something really clear. You're going to have two different results. One will be recipes container, where these recipes will be displayed. But when we're going to search for something, so pasta, for example, this is actually a different result. So this container displays the ones that are from the database, but when we're going to search for something, we're going to replace this container with another container, which is going to display for us the search results. So I'm going to go right after the button, right after the div of that button, and here we're going to have another div, and let's start with an ID with search and results. Now let's add a class to this of, this is going to be the same thing. So grid, so I'm just going to copy this, grid, grid columns 1, grid columns 2, grid columns 3, gap of 8. So it's the same thing, but this is going to be search results. So one thing is to load the data when the website loads, and another thing is to load the data when you're searching for something. So that's it for this section. We can now move on to the next section, which is going to be the about sections. So let's start working on our about section. Want to take a coffee break, a toilet break. This is going to be a perfect moment. And if not, then let's continue on with our about section. So let's first of all take a look at the finished project here. So about section, simple as could be, title, description, photo. Boom. That's all we need for our about section. So ID, about, screen height. Let's display this as flex, justify, center, items, center, and padding y-axis of 16, and padding x-axis of 4, BG, not amber, but gray, 100. Okay, so about section, and well, you can see a difference right now, but you're going to see the difference just in a couple of sections. So about section, let's go in the section tags, create here container, margins, auto on the x-axis, display it as grid. On the median screen, we're going to use a grid pulse 2. You're going to have a gap of 8 and items center. Okay, so let's start populating our about section. First, we need to add a header. So we're going to go ahead here, create an H2, type in just about us. Let's style it. Go ahead, classes. Obviously, we need to increase the text to a 4 or 3. I think it's 3. 3XL. Yes, 3XL. Then let's increase the font. So font semi-bold, margin bottom of 4, text amber of 500. There we go. Next up, we're going to add a description, and basically I'm just going to copy this, finish the same. So 2 paragraph tags, text LG, margin bottom, and I'm missing here a all around div. So let me just go up here before the H2, create a div with just a text gray 700. Okay. Now we're going to move everything that we created so far up in this div. Okay. There we go. Because the grid works like this. We're going to have one on one side, one element, and the other element will be on the right side, which is actually that image. So that's what we're going to do up next. After this div, we're going to add the image for the about section. And basically, I'm just going to copy it in because it's a unsplashed image. So we're going to put it in a container of rounded, so we can round out the image, flow hidden, and box shadow LG. And then just copy in this image, which is basically just a nice little food image. So we are done with our about section. I'm going to close this one up. So we can start working on our next sections, which is going to be the contact section. And by the way, so you can navigate through them, the recipe section will be taken care of in JavaScript. So I don't want this video to be too long. I'm going to copy in the context section and go through each and every line of code. Okay, we have an idea of content. We have the screen size, padding, X and Y axis, background amber. There we go. Now let's start up with the container. The container is basically wrapped around everything. It has, as always, margins auto on the x-axis. And then we're going to start up with an H2, which is going to be a text to XL, font semi-bold, margin bottoms of 8, and the text of gray. So these two are just paragraph tags. What is interesting is actually the social media section, because here is where we're going to use Font Awesome for. So for Font Awesome, basically just going to use a couple of icon tags. So using icon tags with the specific classes is, for example, if I would replace this with Instagram, let's say it's going to change also to Instagram, but we're going to leave it at Facebook. So FAB means Font Awesome. The B, what does the B stand for? I forgot about it. So then FA, Facebook, and Square icon. I also added a bit of hover effect. So each time you're going to hover over this icon, initially it's going to be dark as the entire container, but then in a hover effect, you're going to see amber of 500. Also transition and duration. So in order to have the same feeling, you can increase them using this text XL. If I'm going to go here to 4, this increases. If you want to make them larger, please feel free to do so. So it's pretty much the same thing for Twitter, and it's the same thing for Instagram. Now, next up is where it's getting really interesting is our form. For a form, we're going to use the form tag, play it, as you can see here, with pretty much limiting its max width to a medium screen size, margins auto. We're going to change the background to white now, to make it pop out the screen. So I have more emphasis on the form. The input text, you can see, we're going to maintain the same principle as this input text. So borders rounded and the same on focus element or effect that the ring will be an amber ring. So you need to take out the outline and replace it with the ring amber. The width is going to take out the full width of its container, which is basically the form, and they are basically the same, excepting. So what is interesting here, when I try to submit this, you can see that each and every field needs to be completely typed out, in order for this to work. And of course, it's not going to go anywhere because we don't have anything integrated. So that's basically it. That's it for the form. So we talked about the footer. So now we can move on to JavaScript and start working on our database. So what I'm going to do now is go over to JavaScript, and we're going to start by creating our database. So we're going to create a const, a variable with title of recipes, and this will be an array of objects. So each and every, okay, now finished project, recipe here, the image, the hover effect here, the zoom effect, everything that you see here will be created using JavaScript. So this is why this website is called a dynamic recipe website, because it's loading the information dynamically from the database. The database is currently on script file, but you could put it to any data hosting service and just use a asynchronous code to load it. Maybe we're going to do this in another video. For now, I'm just going to quickly explain how this is going to work. So we're going to have for each and every object key value pairs. So the first key will be the title, and here the title of this is spaghetti carbonara. Click on it, it's going to open it. So key value pairs, basically we're going to type in the key, then column, then open and close curly double quotation marks, and then within a string, we're going to have the title, so the value. Now we're going to end with a comma, then the next key value pair, which is going to be the category, and it's going to be in a category of pasta. Now remember when we searched here, this project, when I search for pasta, hit enter, it's going to result in categories. So basically we're searching categories. Next we're going to have the image. So image, and here we're going to paste in an image from themable.com. So you're going to go to https column / www World Wide Web themabledb.com, images, media, meals, and this is the ID for one specific image. We can't see anything right now because we don't have the logic. Just going to try and explain first of all how the database works. Now, after this, we're going to have a description or ingredients, sorry about that. So ingredients. Now, the ingredients will be again a array of strings. So open and close double quotation marks, 200 grams of spaghetti, then another one. So end this with a comma and just going to paste in the rest of the recipe or the ingredients. And then we're going to have an introduction, which is basically going to be how to prepare the meal. Right after this, we're going to have, right after the ingredients, we're going to have the introduction. So basically the introduction, if we click on one of these, so here's are the ingredients, here's the introduction, cook the spaghetti in, style boiling, blah, 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 with the pasta is cooking, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So this is where the information is coming. It's coming from this database. Now, the entire database consists of only 6 recipes. So I'm just going to paste them all in here. You can get them from the file. I'm going to make this smaller, so close it up. Remember that little icon. And now we can start working on displaying the recipe. So what I'm going to create here is create a function, call it display recipes. And this function is going to take in a argument, which is going to be recipe. So each and every time we're going to mistype here. Each and every time we're going to use this function is going to take a recipe and then display it to our website. So where will this be displayed? Well, we're going to go ahead and take the document.add event listener. We're going to listen to the DOM content load. So when the website loads, we're going to trigger here a arrow function, and this is then going to display recipes and take in a recipe. Okay, so this is where the content, this is where when we load the page, we're going to grab onto the database and take a recipe and display it. So this will be a to-do, create a function to display the recipes. Okay, and this right here is to-do display recipes on, not on, display recipes when the website loads. Now, where should be those recipes displayed? Well, we're going to go to our display recipes. We're going to go ahead and grab one first of all to a container. So let's create here a variable const called container, and we're going to go to the document dot get element by ID, query selectors, and we're going to grab onto the recipes or recipe container. Okay, now the recipe container, also search for it. So recipe container, copy it. Go to HTML, Control F, recipe container. We did not add the ID. So go ahead and add the ID. Where could our recipe container be? Well, here, the recipe. Oh, okay. Recipe container is recipe. And in order to be sure that this works, let's just console log the container. Container, go to our project, right click, inspect, go to console. And you should see your recipe container logged in here. Let's hit a refresh. There you go. So what is happening here? The display function is triggered when the website loads, and the function is for now just grabbing onto creating a variable, grabbing on to the container and displaying it in the console. Boom, simple as that. So I'm going to comment this out. We know that the recipe container is in the website and we can have access to it. Next, what we're going to go ahead and do is take the container, and this is DOM manipulation. So basically, we're going to take its inner HTML and play absolutely nothing in there. Even if you would have, or something, I'm going to comment this out. So here's the future recipes. So if I would go ahead here in future recipes, recipe container, and type something in here, you should see it here. But as soon as I trigger this, comment this back in, it disappear. Meaning that it's going to take whatever is in here and make it disappear. And we need this due to the fact that when we are triggering this function, it should, so the search function, it should clear the recipes container. Now, let's go ahead and do something with our database. So we have our recipes, and we have multiple recipes. And what we want to do is take each and every recipe and display it to the screen. Now, the way we do this is, first of all, because this is an array, so recipes, we can use a for each loop on it. So for each, trigger this. So for each element, so for each recipe that is in the container, we're going to first of all create a variable here using const. We're going to create here recipe card. Now, in order to create a recipe card, we're actually going to create elements using our JavaScript. So document.create element, and we're going to create just a regular div. Now let's populate, or let's add a couple of recipe card. Let's style this div by using the class name attribute. And within here, you can just type in all of the Tailwind classes we would like to use on this recipe container. So I'm just going to copy them in and go over them. So recipe card relative will be its positioning, the console there. Overflow header rounded with margins medium, shadow medium, hover LG. We're going to hover, transition, so on, so on. So let's go ahead and first things first, add a image. So this image right here, not this one, but this image right here to the container. Again, we need to create an element. So const image and document, create element again. And this time we're going to create a image element. So img. Within this image element, we're going to add the source property to it. And this property, or the source property, will grab its information from recipe for each recipes in the container. We're going to take a recipe, and from that recipe we now have access to each and every key with its values. So for example, the key for recipes, and one recipe is the image for, if you want to access the image. Up again, so dot image will be displayed as an image. Now the image also will have a title, so alt the recipe dot title. Now let's style the image, and you know what? Before I do this, I'm going to take here the recipe card and add this newly created element to it. So we can do here append child, and I'm going to append the image, and also I'm going to take the container and append child, and I'm going to append the recipe card to it. And there we go. You can see that we have now, for each and every card, for each and every recipe, we created a card and we appended an image to it. Okay, now we need to also add title to it, description to it, so on and so on. So it's pretty much repetitive. So what I'm going to do here is pretty much copy in the code. So we'll have it after recipe title. I'm going to copy in everything and go over it. So right here, we're styling the image by adding image classes, class name to it, so with full height, objects, and so on and so on. Scale of the image when you hover over it should increase the scale to 1.5. We're also adding the overlay of the container. Then we're adding a title here. We're having the description, but the categories to it. And then we are appending to overlay, which is the class that is down here. Okay, so only if you hover over image, the overlay will not appear, where if you hover down here, you're going to have the overlay. So we're adding each and everything to our card, recipe card, and then we're adding a show recipe details to it when we're clicking on the card. Now, for now, we're just going to, now console log, just tell us that the show recipe details is not defined when I'm clicking on it. So I'm going to take the show recipe details, which is again taking a recipe, as you can see, as an argument, and I'm going to go down here and create a function for it. So now we're going to show a recipe's details. And for this, we're going to take in a recipe again, open and close parenthesis, and it's pretty much the same thing exactly as we did for the recipes up here in order to show the recipe. So I'm going to copy and paste this in and explain the code. So now if I click on this, it's going to, display me the recipe details. Close it up. So how is this working? The function show recipes is triggered when I'm clicking on a image, because added to the on the card. Wherever I click on the card is going to open this up for me. Also, by the way, this is zoomed in, so if I reset this, it's going to look different, but I'm on a 4K display here, so it might be, if I take a look now in my recording, might be a little bit too small for you to see if you're looking on a laptop screen or something like that. So this is why I'm using 120. Once again, I'm clicking on the card. The card has now an event listener of click on it. So wherever I click on the card is going to listen for that event. Oh, the user clicked on it and is going to trigger this function. This function is going to take in the recipe, do exactly the recipe that I clicked on, because when you're using this for each loop, for each of the recipes, there is going to be a event listener added to it. And as soon as that event is triggered, that specific recipe will be sent down into this function. The show recipes function will create, we call it a modal. So we'll create another element, a div, a modal, which is basically meaning that you're going to have a element that is in the foreground and the background will not be accessible. As you can see, I can't do anything except scroll through it, but I can't access anything from the background, not the foreground. only the foreground will be accessible. So I'm creating this div, I'm styling this div right here. Then I'm creating a content div within the div. So let me just show you how this looks, because you can't see the code. So I'm going to open this up, then hit right click, inspect, I'm going to drag this to the right side. So here's the content, here's the model. If I select it, you're going to see right here. So we're creating this div exactly as we styled it in our JavaScript. Then this model contains another div, which is now this div. This contains then a title, a image, a indicator for the ingredients, so a subtitle, then a list of elements. If I open this up, list of elements, then it has another list. This time it has an ordered list in order for these to be displayed, and so forth and so on. And then we have a close button. Now the close button also has an event listener on it. Click on it, it's going to close the modal. So image, creating an image tag, or creating the element tag, styling the element tag, adding the description to the element tag, creating the tag, the image tag, adding the source to it, adding the title to it as an alternative text, adding the classes to it in order to style it, then adding the ingredients to it, the ingredients list, and then the list is going to be creating a UL, an ordered list, and adding the list elements and so forth. So it's basically the same thing over and over again. And now what we are going to do is search for something. So we're going to go down here and create another to-do, is search for recipes by category. This is very important because you need to specify what you're searching for. So we're going to create here another function. We're going to call it filter recipes. Okay, open and close parentheses. This is going to take in a query. What is a query? Well, something you type in, a request. Now we're going to go ahead and create a variable here, call it const lowercase query. And this is basically why we call it a lowercase query, because this is going to take in the query dot to lowercase, because this function right here will take whatever we type in here, capitalize, for example, capital letters, and turn it into lowercase. Okay. Now all this function needs to return, so we're going to specify a return now. Return from the recipes, because we have access to that database up here. So from the recipes is going to dot filter. So this is a higher order array method, and from here is going to take a recipe, function, and is going to return to us the recipe dot title dot to lowercase, not local, just lowercase, dot includes the lowercase query. Okay, so whatever we type in here in our search is going to look for in the database of what the user searched for. Now, or the recipe ingredients sum, and now we're going to look for the ingredients. So ingredient, narrow function here, and we're going to search for the ingredient to lowercase dot that includes the lowercase query again. Now we are also going to use the categories. So and I'm just going to copy this, the recipe, just type it in. Recipe category to lowercase function to lowercase that includes the lowercase query. Okay. So for example, this has lemon. Oh, wait, we also need to trigger this function. So we're going to go down on document load. We're going to create here a variable const. We're going to call it search input document dot get element, or let's use query selector. Query selector search dash input, and also the button const search, not input, but button document, same thing. Document query selector. I'm going to select now the ID of search and button and scroll up a bit. So now I'm going to add the event listener of click on this button. So search button dot add event listener, and if someone, you can also add the on click. Think about it. Now let's use an add event. So the event listener of click, and when this click is triggered, then const. First of all, we're going to create that query. So query will be the search input. So from this little fellow, the dot value and dot trim, because I don't want to have any white spaces. Now let's create another one, a results, another variable. And now we're going to use the filter recipe function. And basically we're going to take that query and pass it in here. Okay, so this is where we're going to use our filter recipe function created up here. So when this function is triggered, we're going to take that query, go through this, and search for what we actually searched for. Now the results of the search is where it's getting interesting, because get here another const, and we're going to call this results container. And you guessed it, we're going to go to the document and grab on collector to our ID of search and results. First of all, we're going to clear whatever is in the search results. So results container dot inner HTML. We're going to clear it up. So there's nothing in there. And now we're going to check that if the results dot length is not 0 or is 0 actually, if it's empty, then we're going to take that results container and its inner HTML will be now, and I'm going to use here just create a paragraph tag with a class of gray, text center, no results found. Okay, but else if there is something in there, then we're going to use the display recipes and send in the results. So let's type in here pizza, click on search, trim. Why? What? No. Here, okay. So pizza, search, still having an error. Let's check out the error. For trim is not a function. Missing the value. Dot value dot trim. Now it should work. So pizza, search, and we're going to get only the pizza. Okay. So this is working. Now I also want to be able to just hit enter, actually. Just hit pizza and enter and search for it, and it's pretty simple. We're just going to here, so let's say to do search on input key enter, and this is going to search input dot add event listener. Instead of having our click, we're going to have a key press. Now you need to specify the event, and basically if the event dot disappear event dot key is equal key is equal to enter, then search button dot click. Okay, so pizza enter. Mess something up here. Let me wrap this into an if statement. So if this is true, then I'm going to make this happen basically like this. So pizza, hit enter, and pizza is going to be found. Pasta will be found. Carbonara, same thing. Margarita, no recipe found. Okay. Also, if we click on one of them, it will be displayed. Now, I seem to have some trouble with the image. Let me just figure this out very quickly. Goes up the finished project, and let's refresh here. Okay, there we go. I have more margin to the top. Where's the search project? Let's search for this. Search projects. No, not projects. Recipes. Search recipes. There we go. Margin top of 8. Perfect. And let's also take out those disks from the navigation. So search for nav. And then just go up here in the classes. They, what is this? No. List none. They should take it out. Okay. So recipes about, smooth scrolling. Go up by HTML tag. Add here class smooth. No, not smooth. Scroll and smooth. Scroll behavior smooth. So home recipes about contact. Perfect. And we are done. Hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, like and subscribe. Check out my courses down in the video description. I'm Norbert BM. I teach web development. Happy coding. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.